I'm gonna start it again because I don't know if it recorded everything upside down, which is a pain in the arse. No, the Teflon Dons. I keep saying Teflon Don. Who is the Teflon Don? I swear that's the person. Anyway, I'm not actually 100% sure if this is a copper bottom. That is a copper bottom. Although stainless steel is not magnetic anyway, is it? Well, that is. Could be copper. That could be a copper bottom. Right, so people have been asking me about my pots and my pans and what I use and what I don't use. This is all the stuff that I use relatively regularly. And since I've done the other kitchen equipment video, the knife one, I'll put a link up in there and there'll be a link in the description to the one. I thought I'd carry on with doing kitchen equipment and do some pots and pans. I'm gonna start with stuff that's a bit more frying pan, sort of frying-y sort of stuff. Move on to saucepans and casserole dishes and stuff like that in the next part. So, just briefly go through the main ones we've got. We've got the old school Teflon Don. This is Tefal. Other brands do exist, but Teflon is the super non-stick. Really, nothing's going to stick to that. To the point where, little fact, they had to invent a new way to stick the Teflon to the steel of the pan, or the aluminium of the pan, because no glue they had at the time would stick to Teflon. It was that non-stick. Moving on, we've got the more heavy-duty stainless steel tri-ply non-stick. So this bottom one's taken quite a bit of a beating. This is my old workhorse and this is now my new one. Don't know whether you can tell, so this is a much rougher non-stick surface than this, but this is a lot more hard wearing. You can actually, I'm not going to, you can see where it's starting to get beaten up a bit. You can peel the non-stick off of this with your fingernails. It's super soft and spongy. This, on the other hand, is a lot more hard wearing, can deal with higher temperatures, can deal with, I still wouldn't use metal tools in here, but you can be a little bit less precious about it. It's a lot more heavy, a lot more hard wearing, but not as non-stick. There might be some Teflon in here, but it's a much rougher surface and it's a lot less non-stick. Moving along, got stainless steel. I haven't got a lot of stainless steel. This is a Saucier, sometimes known as a cook's pan, a chef's pan, or a sautees. It's, you saute down some stuff in there to start a sauce off, then you add stocks and creams and whatever to build a sauce. So it's like in between a frying pan and a saute pan, but they're pretty handy for stir frying as well. I really like these pans. But stainless steel. So this one looks a bit grubby, but it'll clean up all right. Need a bit of polish. This is, no, wait, it's Ronseal. That's what it says in the saying. It is stainless steel. Moving along, we've got my personal favourite, cast iron. Now, cast iron it's bomb-proof. It takes a little bit of use, knowing how to use it, and a little bit of care. Similar characteristics to carbon steel, which we've got here as well. Go into those details a bit more. Neither of these are particularly common in the UK. You're much more likely to have stuff down that end. But I quite like both of these for reasons we'll get into in a minute. This pan is, I don't use this too much. It's massive. I had a bit of a cock up when I ordered that. I thought I was getting this, but I got that instead. So I went out and got this. But I've also got a few other, I've got a paella pan and a wok, and I've got a griddle as well that I'll get out. Stuff that's frying, but a bit more specialist. This isn't exhaustive. There are a few other options. So there is also copper pans. Copper is a heavy metal and will give you heavy metal poisoning. So in order to make it food safe, copper pans need to be lined either with tin, stainless steel, or you can get really expensive ones that are lined with silver. They're bloody expensive. Even tin being the cheapest option, copper pans are very expensive. I haven't got any. I would love one. If anyone wants to lend me or give me to try out a copper pan, where do I sign up? I've always been keeping an eye out for cheap copper pans for a while now, and there's nothing that's been worth buying at the price. There are a few other options there, like aluminium pans. So there's also these super crap, super light, also super cheap, ceramic non-stick. Now, I'm sure that is ceramic. It ain't non-stick. It weighs nothing. It's light as anything. I think it was Anthony Bourdain who said, any pan worth owning should do some serious damage if you were to hit someone around the head with it. This would just... Yeah, no. Don't get dragged into buying these ceramic, or there's some that's called like granite, or they're copper finished, or they're copper... unless it is Teflon non-stick, a proper decent chef's non-stick, stainless steel, carbon steel, or cast iron, it's pointless. And if they also say it's non-stick but it's metal tool safe, they're lying to you. Yeah, bollocks to it. Right, so start with the non-stick Macy's. So these pans, the Teflon is, like I said, the most non-stick. These are relatively well used, just because I've had them for a while, because I don't use these very often. They're a bit... a lot of stuff cooked onto them, and like Teflon is like, if I wanted to, I could start peeling this away with my fingernails. It is really, really soft, and it scratches really easy. I don't even always use wood. There's some wooden utensils that I don't bother using in these, that I won't use in these. I've got like silicone spatulas and stuff like that that I use. Even if like the edge on your fish slice, if you've got a plastic or a rubber fish slice, not rubber, but plastic or one of those sort of materials, that can start to get a bit of a burr on it, a bit of an edge, and then that will start scratching that up. I literally only use these non-stick pans, Teflons. These are Tefal. Other brands do exist, but Tefal, they're the Teflon done. All I ever really cook in these are eggs, pancakes, omelettes, really delicate fish, stuff that I know is really, maybe some sort of like really sticky flatbreads, stuff that I know is gonna stick, or stuff that's got a good chance of sticking, but also I can't use any fat with. They need to be cooked dry. Moving up, you've got the big solid. This is a Pro Cook Elite triple ply. This was from Sainsbury's. They don't do them this big anymore, which is unfortunate, because this was a bloody good pan. I had this 5 years or so. It looks really beat up because it was used pretty much every day, non-stop. This was my go-to for pretty much everything. I'd make anything that wasn't going into the oven, only because that's a bit big to go into the oven, not because it's not oven proof. I'd start any sauces in here. I had steaks and stuff like that tend to go on things, but like fry ups, you can cook a fry up for 2, 3, 4 people in here. This got left on the hob for about 18 hours on a medium heat. Not by me, I was Dad, not by me. And it went through the dishwasher once, and after that it was fine. It stood up, it's been scratched up, it's stood up for years. I've replaced it very recently. I would have bought the same one, but unfortunately Sainsbury's don't do it anymore. They've got this is a 32 centimetre. I think they do a 28 centimetre style pan like this, or they do one that's more higher sided, like a saute pan. But this, I would have bought another 3 of these if I'd have known they were stopping making them. So I went out and I replaced it with this from Pro Cook. Good, it's heavy, it hasn't got a copper bottom. These, I still don't use metal utensils in it, but I'm not quite as delicate with them. I still don't go in the dishwasher. All of my cooking, all my frying pans, only the stainless steel actually ends up in the dishwasher, because dishwashers are for dishes, not for frying pans. And all of the surfaces and all of these other pans are damaged by the dishwasher, and they make stuff rust. This is rust just through lots of not being dried out properly. But other things you want to look for in a pan, metal handles are good, because then you can whack them in the oven. These are too big for the oven. These are too big for the oven. These can probably go into the oven. But so this is my go-to pan. If I can only have one pan and I've got to put my brown trousers on and be really sensible, this is probably going to be the pan that I use. You can get away with searing a steak in this. You can get away with cooking pretty much anything in this. Really though, for a steak, you're going to want something that's bigger and heavier, but we'll get to that in a minute. Stainless steel is probably the main thing that a lot of chefs would go to. It's the whack it in the dishwasher, hit it with anything, it's never going to die. Doesn't need anything special to clean and wash it up. This is a bit manky, and I don't know why I haven't given it a polish beforehand, but I've not used too much in the way of stainless steel. It's got a bad press for sticking, so you do always need to use some oil when you're cooking with stainless steel. But I quite like this pan. It's handy because you can use anything in it. You can cook steak in it, you can get a good sear on the outside, then go straight from the hob to the oven. But you can do that as well, cast iron, which is my favourite, as I may have already mentioned. This is an old Mountain cast iron skillet. I think this is a 7 or an 8 inch. I've got some bigger ones. This is I think it's just the Hairy Bikers this one was made by. But I don't think the Hairy Bikers made it themselves. I think they branded it, but, oh. And this is a Lepicure cast iron. Much bigger, got a helper handle. Silicone handle, just to stop the heat, because the heat will come up in the handle. Cast iron, we'll come back to very briefly, because I'm going to quickly jump ahead right to carbon steel. Now, carbon steel is very similar to cast iron in that they both need to be seasoned. And what that means is, it doesn't mean you need to sprinkle on salt. It means you need to essentially cook onto it a polymerized coating of oil, of fat. Cast iron and carbon steel are both very similar in that they both have great thermal properties. You need to let them warm up for quite a while, because there's a bit of an urban legend that they heat up very evenly. Copper pans do that, and that's why a lot of these other pans will have a copper bottom on them, because that's a much better thermal conductor, and it heats up a lot more uniformly. These will start to heat up there where the burner is first, and then get hotter there, and it will slowly spread out. But once you let it preheat, and once the heat is permeated around the entirety of the pan, they will stay hot like a mamma jamma. That's why they're so good at quick, hard, hot sears for the steak, and also for frying. If you put a lot of, you're going to deep fry with a deeper casserole, with a deeper pan, because they hold heat like no one's business, so they never cool down. So if you put a bit of steak in a thinner pan, it pulls a load of heat out of the pan, and the pan needs to heat back up again. But these are so thick and so heavy and so dense that they just hold so much heat in them. And also, go straight from the hob into the oven. You can go straight onto the table with like serving food out of these as well. Obviously, you need to put something on the table so you don't burn through the table. But there's nothing better for searing meat than a cast iron pan. Carbon steel is a close second, but there are slight differences. So cast iron, I don't know, where's my camera? You probably can't tell on that one. That one, you might be able to see just how rough that surface is. So cast iron is essentially, well, it's exactly that, it's cast. It's a mould of sand is made, and then the metal, the cast iron, the iron is poured into it, which is where you get this rough surface. There's actually more carbon in cast iron than there is in carbon steel, ironically, but carbon steel is more, I think it's not extruded, but I think they have a flat sheet and then it's rolled and pressed and stuff. They're both raw. It's probably the wrong term. They both rust if just left out in the air. So you need to see, these pans aren't dirty. These have a similar coating, but because they're black, you can't see it. This has got a little bit of crust on there that really I should have washed off. But the pan, when it comes, will be much more similar to this sort of colour here. So like a shiny metal steel colour. You need to cook onto it a layer of fat. People will argue all the time over what fat's best to use. I use sunflower oil pretty much exclusively, and I've never had any problems with that, but I use any high smoke point heat. But what you want to do is you put the oil in the pan, and you heat it up, and it'll start making smoke. You want to wipe it, put a bit of oil in and wipe it over, so it's just essentially you want like a molecule thick layer of oil all over the pan, including the handle, including the bottom, because you don't want it to start rusting. You can see I've got a little few specks of rust here and there where I've missed a bit. And then you can do it on the hob if you don't mind making a load of smoke, or you can whack it in the oven as hot as the oven will go, and then let it cool down in the oven and rinse and repeat. When you first get a pan, you're going to want to do that a couple of times, build up a decent initial seasoning. But as you go along, that seasoning will build up as you cook with oil and fat. That's the one advantage that one of the advantages that carbon steel has over cast iron is that it's a much smoother surface. So you can make it a lot more non-stick than cast iron will be. But the flip side of that is cast iron is a little bit better performing at the heat side of things, and it's a bit cheaper as well. Neither of these are that common in the UK. In America, cast iron and carbon steel, but especially cast iron, everyone in America has a cast iron skillet. It's cheap as chips. It's a bit more expensive over here, but if you look around, I think I got this for like 20 quid out of TK Maxx. And this, I can't even remember where, I think I might have got this off of Amazon for like $7.99. You can buy the enamelled cast iron stuff, like the Le Creuset stuff. That's also not going to be non-stick, but you're not going to have to season that the way you do with these. But there's something about I've had this pan, I think I've had this pan longer than most friendships I currently have, and definitely longer than my current relationship. And this seasoning I have built up over years, and this is essentially a culinary Tamagotchi. I love this pan. And like I said earlier, if I could only have one pan with my brown trousers on, I'd pick this, because it's sensible. But I'd probably go with this. There are other issues as well, like if you cook, this pan's particularly well seasoned, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But these ones that I don't use as much, that don't have quite as good a seasoning on, if you cook very acidic stuff, tomatoes, stuff like that, it can leach out and cause flavour issues. But the other thing is, this will shatter as well. I could probably drop it onto the floor. If I dropped it onto the floor from here, it'd probably go through the floor. It would make a dent in the floor at least. But if you were to drop this onto a hard floor from a height, it would probably shatter. It'll crack. And if you were screaming hot and you ran it under the tap, cold tap, it'd explode. Carbon steel's not quite as delicate in that way. But there's just saying carbon steel's not quite as... I just slightly prefer the cast iron for some reason. Neither will go in the dishwasher. They're always washed by hand. There's also a that you can't ever use soap on cast iron. That's it. Back in the day, like in the old Wild West and the frontier, you'd have to build up seasoning with oil the same. But soaps back in the day had a lot more pretty crap. They were crap. They were a lot stronger. They had lye in them maybe, or other things like that, which would eat through that coating on the pan. Normal, very liquid, the sort of stuff you'd have in your kitchen these days, not too big of a deal. But what you do need to do is clean it, wash it. I usually wipe it out while it's still hot, or if it's cooled down, I heat it back up again. Sometimes all you need to do is just wipe it out with a bit of kitchen roll. If you do need to wash it, soap, sponge, give it a wash, give it dry, whack it back on the hob, heat it up, wipe it out with a bit of oil again, let that oil cook off. Carbon steel works exactly the same. I mean, you couldn't even get that in the dishwasher if you wanted to, but yeah. So they're the main things. Like if you're only getting one pan, I'd say get the good quality, spend a bit of money on it, and it will last you a long time. Like I said, I actually got this cheap because it was in a sale. I think I only paid 25 for it, but it was supposed to be 50, 60 quid. This was 60 quid. I'm not sponsored by any of these people. ProCook don't give me anything, but I go to ProCook because I know ProCook are good quality stuff. This was 60 odd quid, but I know it's going to last me 5, 10, 15 years. The cast iron, my grandkids will probably be cooking on this stuff. It's just never going to die, but you need to look after it. Stainless steel, it's got its place, but I'm not a massive fan of it. If you're only going to have one pan, it's the non-stick, big heavy non-stick. If you're only gonna, if I'm allowed 2 pans, then I'm gonna go for the small, delicate Teflon non-stick pan and a nice big cast iron that I can cook steaks in, and then that's gonna cover all your bases. Third pan, I'd probably add that as the third pan. Some of these pans are expensive, you can't just pick them up and try them out. I get it. But you can get cheap stainless steel. I think I got this off of Amazon, say Cuisinart skillet stainless steel. I doubt that cost me more than £15. It's got a decent heavy base. This is what you want to look for in most pans, is a metal handles. If the pan overall size, if the overall size of the pan is small enough to go in your oven, get it with a metal handle so you can go into the oven with it. A bit different with the non-stick, because you're probably never going to want to go into the oven with that. But cast iron, carbon steel, stainless steels, they can all go in the oven. And if you can't be bothered with the upkeep of something like carbon steel, don't get it. Because it's going to go rusty and you're going to throw it away. Get something that's treated or doesn't need to be treated at all. Right, a few more specialised frying equipment. We've got a griddle. This is a griddle with the ridges. I haven't got one that's flat. I wouldn't mind one. You can get ones that are reversible. Really, I should have got one of them. I wasn't thinking ahead, but this is cast iron. This is a paella pan. As you can see, it's got a bit of yellow hue because I've used it to make Bombay potatoes in as well. That's, like I said, not specifically for paella. You can use it for other things. And these are two different woks. This is a very small little wok that was non-stick. It's had the non-stick chewed out of it. And this is a proper sort of Chinese style wok. It's got a round bottom, and it's also carbon steel. So much like the pans earlier, this would have originally shown up with a colour much more similar to this part of the handle here. But I've slowly built up a seasoning on this pan over the years, which has made it not 100% non-stick, but it's not particularly sticky. Because it's got a round bottom, it needs to sit in, that just sits over the burner, and the wok sits in it, stop it from rolling all over the place. Paella pan, are these worth getting? If you know you want to cook a lot of paella, might be worth getting a paella pan. I like these sort of things, because again, that can come out, go straight into the oven. I've got Bombay potatoes in here, I've cooked paella in here, cooked a few different things in here. And it's nice. It's also a nice serving tray. The griddle, I probably don't use all that often. You're much more likely to get a cast iron pan out, but if you've got a nice big hob and you can leave this on your hob all the time, or some of the bigger ranges, the fancier ones come with, these come off and you've got a replacement for these with one of these. The flat ones, maybe I would use that more often, but I've got quite a small kitchen, so that just gets in the way. The wok I do use quite a lot. I think they're only about £20–30. They, much like the other cast iron, the carbon steel stuff, bulletproof. Nothing's really gonna kill it as long as you maintain that seasoning. Much the same way, it doesn't gets washed out under hot water with a bit of soap if it needs it, and then coat the oil, whack it on the hob, and then I just move it around to burn that oil off. And once it starts to smoke and stops smoking, the pan's seasoned. That's pretty much it, really. I can't think of much else. There are like specific sort of fish pans, and you get the flat, super flat crepe pans. I just make do with what I've got out of all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, takeaways. It's definitely worth getting something heavy. Weight is good because weight means dense, and dense means it's going to hold a lot of heat. If you like cooking, I would say it's worth spending a bit more money. I mean, you can spend hundreds of pounds. I would say in the region of £40 to £60 on a really good quality pan that's going to do 90% of everything you're going to want to do in the kitchen. I would say get yourself a smaller, cheaper cast iron pan or carbon steel pan. Try that out, especially if you like cooking steak or searing or burgers or other meats that need a hot, hard, quick sear, because they're just unbeatable at that, but they do take extra help, extra work, extra maintenance. But you can find them quite cheap and they will last forever. Like I said, my grandkids will be cooking in those if they enjoy cooking, or if the robots aren't feeding us all whenever we want it at that point. But yeah, so I hope that was interesting and I hope you learned something. I said I've done knives, I'll put a link to that there. Next I'll be doing like saucepans, casserole sort of dishes. Don't worry, I've got a load of them as well. Probably not quite as many as I've got frying pans. Yeah, and like I said, if you know of anyone that's wants to get rid of a cheap copper frying pan or any one of the companies that make them see this and they fancy chucking one my way, let me know. I will quite happily sell out. If there's any kitchen equipment you want to know about, or you're wondering what you need for what, or if this is that, if that's any good, if this is any good, let us know. Hit us up in the comments, private message me, hit me up on Instagram. All of my deets are in the description. Can't believe I just said deets. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you when I next see you. See you later.